Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the great people of the constituency of St. Barnabas, grateful to them for giving me the opportunity to serve in this honorable place for a second consecutive term. And despite all of the odds in that 21 campaign, God had a plan and just said, Shanendon, be still. And so I am grateful that Almighty God has allowed my political journey to continue uninterrupted, and not to suggest that those whose journeys have been interrupted are any less than I am, but I'm grateful to stand here as someone who has been re-elected for his second consecutive term, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I give thanks to the people of St. Barnabas because they have given me a rare honor that thousands have desired to have in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which is to serve as a member of Parliament, so I don't take it lightly. I teach my children every day the importance of service to others, and that, again, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're rarely judged by how much education, how much wealth you have, but more so by the amount of contribution that you would have put into the lives of others. And indeed, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, as I get into this budget debate, Madam Speaker, there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of contributions thus far. I think we're on the back half of the debate. And you hear a number of things addressing a number of issues, both lifetime, so to speak, and issues, quite frankly, that the Bahamian people have been contending with for the last 40 years, Madam Speaker. And, you know, others have said it, but I too have been consistent in saying that with the backdrop of 50 years of independence, I don't feel, Madam Speaker, and this is sort of an admonishment even to myself as part of this body, I don't feel, Madam Speaker, that we have sufficiently elevated the debate on a number of the major issues affecting the Bahamian people and that have been affecting the Bahamian people over the last 50 years. And so while we celebrate and acknowledge the contributions, the sacrifices, and the advancements and progress that has happened in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, this should be a moment for us to ask ourselves, what is next? What is next for the Bahamian people, and what is next for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as we prepare for another 50 years, Madam Speaker. And there will be a number of issues, Madam Speaker, that we will have to contend with over the next few years, within the next 10 years, but surely in the future. The issue of our sovereignty as a nation, Madam Speaker, our issue of as a sovereign nation, and as I've said before, using the term, those irreconcilable tensions that exist between the movement of human rights and state sovereignty, Madam Speaker. And up front, on that note, Madam Speaker, I wish to be very clear, without getting ahead of any debate that would happen in here, but definitely a debate that is raging out there in Bahamian society. While we understand that we live in a global community, Madam Speaker, I believe that it is so important for us to continue to espouse our values as a nation and who we want to continue to be, and even as we evolve as a nation, who we want to become, but just maintaining our foundational values as a country. And to push back, Madam Speaker, and to push back on those that would seek to redefine the Bahamian people and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on their terms, Madam Speaker. At the end of the day, the diversification in the global community is important. So let the Bahamas and the Bahamian people, let them determine what they want to be, what they want to be for next generations of Bahamians. And it makes no sense to be naive of, we know how that discussion goes, that the leverage that is put on small island developing states like the Bahamas, we know it. You know, we know the leverage they come to put on us. But let us be resolute in being who it is that our founders have set us out to be, and as importantly, what the Bahamian people want us to be, whether in 2023, 2053, or whatever time it is. That is the responsibility of the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. And so as we have that discussion, I hope, and I do believe, that all of us that are citizens of this great country will make sure that the voices of the Bahamian people remain resolute and remain ironclad in any debate relative to defining countries or what countries ought to be, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I mentioned that, talk about the economy, we are talking about the budget. Another item, Madam Speaker, before I get directly into the budget, is that, you know, this trade deficit, like we talk about the Bahamian economy and what we want the Bahamian economy, what it should be at this particular point, at this particular juncture in our development. And when will we truly, Madam Speaker, bring the type of diversification and expansion of the Bahamian economy? When will we not allow some of these issues that, quite frankly, I guess all sides have played with politically for some time? But there is no doubt that our debt, Madam Speaker, continues to be a big hurdle for our development as a people. We look at our trade deficit, $3.3 billion, and that puts more pressure on the tourism product and the need for tourism to provide the monies, if you will, that's needed in terms of our reserve and so forth, Madam Speaker. And then we always talk also, Madam Speaker, about the financial services industry. And again, we know how the OECD and the European Union and these other bodies continue to try to move the goalposts relative to the financial services industry. And as I've said before, clearly they don't want us in the business, Madam Speaker, but we must continue to be agile enough to, be ready and to get ahead of, as best as we can, the dictates of these bodies that, again, don't want us in the business, Madam Speaker. Also, Madam Speaker, as I think about the 50th year, I think about tourism and how important tourism has been to us. And even though I've said that the importance of tourism can't be overstated. So I would never suggest that we pack up our tourism bag, so to speak. But I did say that we have to really get to the point, and I believe that we are making inroads, but let us focus on getting to the point where we don't have to rely so much, and I know so much is a relative term, rely on the planes and the cruise ships to constantly be here for us to ensure our prosperity. Yes, it's part of the equation, but let us ensure that we are finding ways to really focus on empowerment that does not just solely rely on something that continues to be good to us, there is no doubt, Madam Speaker, but something that allows us to control our destiny in so many ways. And the pandemic, obviously, while it brought many countries to its knees, thank God it did not bring the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to its knees, but it also was an indication of how we should be looking broadly at the Bahamian economy and what allows us to enjoy long-term prosperity, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, this budget, Madam Speaker, you've heard, Madam Speaker, this budget categorized in so many different ways, Madam Speaker. And I wish to say from the outset, Madam Speaker, that as I get into the shortcomings of this budget, that though one can attribute an election loss to many things, there's a moment, a theme, a narrative, that one thing, that when you look back, it was the reason you lost the people and lost the election, Madam Speaker. It reminds me, Madam Speaker, when I was in university playing college basketball, and at the end of the game, after a loss, coach would come in the locker room, and he would have a circle, and sometimes he would circle a number, sometimes he would circle that amounted to a statistic, something in the box score, or he would circle a word that over the course of a game with everything happening, there was this one moment, this one thing that really turned the game on its head. You know, sometimes it could be two, when we didn't get those 2 rebounds. Sometimes it could be circling the word heart. Fellas didn't play with any kind of heart today. So though there's so many things going on, it is just that one reflection point, Madam Speaker, that as I draw it back to politics now, that governments will look back if they're honest and say, you know what? Boy, that's really when we lost the election, even though there's a formal process that the Bahamian people go through to decide who will govern them every electoral cycle. Madam Speaker, for this government, that moment was when this government pledged to the Bahamian people that they would not raise their taxes. And what have they done? They have raised their taxes, Madam Speaker. They have broken a fundamental pledge to the Bahamian people and have lost their trust. They have been shouting in this House relative to their governance, results, results, results. But the Bahamian people are saying, taxes, Madam Speaker, please. I can't hear myself, Madam Speaker. Right? But the Bahamian people are shouting, taxes, taxes, taxes. What makes it worse, Madam Speaker, and more insulting, is that they are telling the Bahamian people they aren't taxing them while taxing them.
My Lord.
Like one of my constituents said, they taking us for fools. Right? Yeah, you got to listen to the people. Right? And you know, Madam Speaker, I know, Madam Speaker, they're trying to distract now, but it's a real thing. You know, another constituent, Madam Speaker, said, Mr. Cartwright, say, they're urinating on us and they're calling it rain. That's what they said. No, you want me to tell you what they said? They say they're peeing on us and they're calling it rain. That's what they say. So it can be cast like a riddle, Madam Speaker. So get this, Madam Speaker. This government is doing to the Bahamian people what they promised they would not do, while telling them they aren't doing what they are in fact really doing to them. It has become comical to the average man on the street, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Gambama.
Said, I used the word, I'm not sure it's parliamentary. I remember when that was used previously in this House, it was used by the then member for Cooperstown. He'd say they urinate in your face and call it dribbly rain. I think he's borrowed it, but he's using a word. I'm wondering whether or not Madam Speaker considers it to be parliamentary.
Madam Speaker?
We'll change the word to urinate.
Oh, okay, no problem. No problem, Madam Speaker.
I let you say P next.
They're saying that they're trying to pull a fast one on us, Mr. Cartwright. That's what they said. So the reality is that this government continues to blame and point fingers. They've fallen into the historic trap, Madam Speaker. Please, Madam Speaker. Please, Madam Speaker, please. Please. Point fingers. They've fallen into the historic trap and have started to drink their own Kool-Aid. And many governments, Madam Speaker, have fallen into this trap. Some would even say we fell into the trap. Right? So this should be instructive. You know, my friend from Pinewood, who isn't in here right now, has an expression that governments and politicians have a tendency to freak themselves out, meaning that they start to believe their own PR. Madam Speaker, this government, they've started to believe their own hype. The reality is, Madam Speaker, This government believes that blaming the former administration for where and how they have failed will get them reelected. The truth is, Madam Speaker, the Bahamian people makes a final judgment at the polls. We received as this government is being judged on what they have promised and have failed to deliver. They are saying to themselves, the people will never vote for the F&M again. Madam Speaker, you know, the word in certain quarters in the last election was, the people wouldn't elect brave. I remember, you know, people would say that. Yeah. But they did. Just as the PLP said in 2017, they won't elect ministers, and they did. History is the greatest teacher. And Madam Speaker, what the side opposite, and you know, there's a lot of veterans over here, the reality of it is that the Bahamian people want to know, what has the government of the day done? And what's a point to that, Madam Speaker? The member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini and Fox Hill, they were part, and the Prime Minister was the Deputy Prime Minister of a government that the Bahamian people kicked out of office in 2017. But alas, the Bahamian people have brought the member for West Grand Bahama, Fox Hill, and made the member for Cat Island Prime Minister. The point is, the continued pointing and looking at the rearview mirror does not allow you to be stronger today or will be able to get the trust of the Bahamian people again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, here's the truth. Minister Mitchell, right, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, you know, Minister Mitchell, you know, who's a shrewd political person. I listened in his contribution. He said a number of things, but he also said, paraphrasing, I got my eyes on 2026. But we want the government to know the Bahamian people, too, have their eye on 2026, yes, Madam Speaker. They are waiting on you all. Madam Speaker.
Service above self. That's what he focused on.
It is often said that a day is a long time in politics. We are often reminded that the people who put us here have no patience for overpromising and under-delivering, and they have given governments a short rope. So here we are, Madam Speaker, 2 years into the New Day government. The polls have been closed. Large crowds are no more.
Yes.
No more sea of political paraphernalia. Even the adoring supporters are no more, because they too have been disappointed in their party, their ministers, and their MPs. What is left that is true and real is that what type of life have you created for the Bahamian people in 2 years as a government?
Pressure.
Madam Speaker, denial and confusion has taken up residence in this government, and it's clear that this denial has signed a long-term lease. Yes. It is here to stay. The government is out of touch, out of ideas, and the Bahamian people have said they have no confidence in this government, so they are out of time.
Yes, 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 sir.
They have convinced themselves that they have brought long-lasting prosperity and secured future for the Bahamian people. But the Bahamian people have said they have brought more burdens, more economic pain to their lives. As a Bahamian single mother asked me weeks ago, and most recently a police officer, a civil servant, and a taxi driver, what world is this government living in?
Alternate reality.
Madam Speaker, there are two worlds. The world the government is living in and the one Bahamians are facing with every single day. Madam Speaker, the government has emphasized the importance of traveling, or we've had this discussion about traveling, but the Bahamian people are saying their next trip should be to their world. That's where their next trip should be. Their world that the PLP government lives in, and there's a world that the Bahamian people live in, Madam Speaker. In their world, they fulfilled a campaign promise and promised the Bahamian people relief by lowering VAT to 10%, and that has cured all economic ills and brought relief. But in the real world, for the Bahamians, VAT was lowered, but there has been no benefit as the government has not had a balanced approach, as the government has gone tax crazy and increased everything else, causing more hardships, more struggle, more pain. In their world, Madam Speaker, they are the greatest government ever, creating prosperity for the Bahamian people under their blueprint for change. In the real world of the Bahamian people, they continue to experience struggle, hardships, under the blueprint for pain. In their world, once you don't call it a tax, it's not a tax. But in the real world for the Bahamian people, whether it's a levy, an increase, a fare, a fee, in their terms, it amounts to a tax, an economic burden on the Bahamian people. In this government, Madam Speaker, denial reigns supreme. In their world, they've convinced themselves that they are the best thing, like Mama used to say, since sliced bread. Their world is filled with living in the past, blame casting, pointing fingers as if September 15, 2021 is still here, and not taking responsibility for governing the country. In the real world, the Bahamian people see a government that has been in charge of the reins of government for almost 2 years now, living off the progress put in motion by the former administration, with no new ideas of their own. In their world, Madam Speaker, they are paralyzed to do anything about increasing crime in our nation. In the real world, decreasing crime, in the real world for the Bahamian people, they are not leading on the issue of crime, as we have had to contend with 178 murders in almost 2 years. Madam Speaker, in their world, they have championed a better life for the poor and marginalized Bahamians in our society. But in the real world for those Bahamians, they feel abandoned by this government, and the promise of their security has been a sham. In their world, the people over the hill continue to be in love with them and in love with this government. But in the real world of the Bahamian people, people who live over the hill, this government has forgotten them and showed no real commitment to transform their lives. In their world, they have convinced themselves that they have had the backs of the police, correctional services, and members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. But in the world of our security branches, the government has disrespected them and betrayed them.
Hit them with a command.
In their world, they have been good to business and the economy, but in the real world of the Bahamian people, Bahamian businesses continue to be strangled and suffocated by the policies of this administration. In their world, they've been strategic about the Family Islands, strategic about Family Islands development. But in the real world of the Bahamian people, the Family Islands, they've been left out in the cold with no real strategic commitment to their economic development. And Madam Speaker, let's talk about, what's my time? I just need to know, what's my time? Let's talk about taxes, Madam Speaker. All right, good. Thank you. That's good time. Let's talk about taxes. A central part of this government's economic policy is an aggressive tax assault on the Bahamian people.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, let's look at the history of VAT, Madam Speaker. In 2014, there was no VAT.
Yes.
Then in 2015, Madam Speaker, in 2015, the then PLP government
Raise it by 70.5%.
That's right. There was no VAT in 2014, then in 2015. Within the proposed, this is a quote now from the Honorable Michael Alkidas, Minister of State for Finance. Within the proposed package of tax reform, it is recommended that a VAT be introduced at a rate of 15%, consistent with VAT rates generally charged elsewhere. Such a VAT rate, 15%, they was thinking, but 15%, they introduced VAT to the country.
Yes.
They introduced VAT,
Yes.
okay? Right? VAT rates generally charged elsewhere. Such a VAT rate, in combination with the other reform proposals, would ensure that the government will have access to adequate revenue streams for the future. Madam Speaker, it was this government that introduced VAT to the Bahamian people.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
You know, the other day,
Yes,
the member for Carmichael said that when it came to the port, said that the port was the member for Kalani's baby. You remember that?
Yes.
Right? No, but you repeated that. Yes. Yes, sorry, you quoted him. Yes. But Madam Speaker,
I know you're remorseful now, but that's
Madam Speaker, what the Bahamian people know is that value-added tax is the PLP's baby. Yeah. They introduced VAT.
Yes.
So, Madam Speaker, among the other things that the government continues to tout that they introduced to the Bahamian people, they also introduced VAT.
Yeah.
So on your long list, make sure to tell the Bahamian people, remember, we introduced VAT to you.
Like it looked just like yours. Look just like yours. Yes.
They fell in love
Yes,
with it.
look just like yours. Yeah.
Madam Speaker, and when they introduced, Madam Speaker, they introduced this taxing regime called VAT in 2015, and they did not carve out any room for relief for the most vulnerable.
My baby was placed on steroids.
They didn't carve out, Madam Speaker, any relief for the most vulnerable in our society, Madam Speaker.
My Lord.
The PLP increased taxes on Bahamian people by 100% in 2015. 100%. And again, in 2022, raised taxes on the poor and vulnerable by another 100%, from 0% to 10% on breadbasket items. All right? Okay? How can they claim, Madam Speaker, to be a friend of the poor, but increase taxes by 100% on their most essential needs? Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I can't hear myself, Madam Speaker.
We know it's painful for you all, but listen, be respectful. Be respectful.
Madam Speaker, how can they claim to be a friend of the poor, but increase taxes by 100% on their most essential needs, including medicines and baby items, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, they had options when they reduced VAT to 10%. They had options.
Yes, they did.
They had options.
Yes, they did.
They had options, Madam Speaker. What did they choose? They chose to tax breadbasket items and medicines impacting the poor and marginalized and the middle class. They chose to, Madam Speaker. They chose to. They chose to, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, they talk about relief in minimum wage on the surface. Who could complain? Everybody agrees that minimum wage increase is a good thing, Madam Speaker. We know, because the F&M was the party that established minimum wage. So we know.
From the break.
From the break.
From the break.
When there was 25 years, when for 25 years there was no minimum wage in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Election after election after election, it took the Free National Movement to establish minimum wage. That's our baby. That's our baby. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, they talk about
Members. Members.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, in the lives and the man in the street, it amounts to a mirage, a bait and switch.
Yes.
Give you an increase over here and take it back in taxes
PLP
over here.
And the PLP take it away.
You know, give you a little something over here, but take it back in taxes
PLP
over here.
Give it, the PLP take it away.
They can't get around it, Madam Speaker. They can't shake it no matter how they try.
Oh, yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. Or should I say, Madam Speaker, the proof is in the taxes.
Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Yeah.
And while this government, Madam Speaker, and while this government was raising taxes on average Bahamians, you gave rich people, Madam Speaker, please, I can't, no.
Yes.
And while this government was raising taxes on average Bahamians, Madam Speaker, you gave rich people who can afford properties over $2 million a 17% tax decrease.
Yes.
17% tax decrease. And expensive yacht owners, duty-free importation on their yachts.
Shame.
17% tax cut for the rich, 100% tax increase for the poor. To add insult to injury, Madam Speaker, the government is sending themselves dizzy, employing all kinds of hocus pocus, trying to convince the Bahamian people they aren't taxing. But the Bahamian people know better,
Yes.
Madam Speaker. And you know, I saw...
Don't try to contain yourself. He knows the Continues it.
Yeah, that's all right. The clock could, Ain't worrying about that.
But the truth never changes.
You know, Madam Speaker, I looked at it, Madam Speaker, and, I looked at the definition of a tax, Madam Speaker, Definition, and yeah, as a matter of fact, I did Google it. You can find it in your
Yeah, it means PLP, fiscal management.
Yeah, you'll see it there. Madam Speaker, taxes by any other means, Madam Speaker.
Still a tax.
Right? Levy, like I said,
Still
fee,
a tax.
fare increase, a bump in price, an uptick.
Still a tax.
We just put a little something on it, but it's still a tax and a burden to the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker.
Yes, it is.
And they can dress it up in a pants, in a skirt. I'm a Junkanoo man, they could even dress it up in an off-the-shoulder piece.
Yeah.
But it's still a tax,
Still a tax.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
And Madam Speaker, the amazing thing is, Madam Speaker, this government said that if you elected the Free National Movement, Madam Speaker, this is what they said. If you elected the Free National Movement, your taxes would go up, Madam Speaker. This is what they said.
Deception.
They said your taxes will go up.
Deception.
They said your taxes will go up, Madam Speaker. Right? They said, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, they said,
It would be unparliamentary.
they said their taxes would go up.
Repeat yours.
Right? That's what they said, Madam Speaker, right here. Davis insists that the F&M is likely to increase taxes if it wins the next election.
My Lord.
That's July 20th, 2021, Madam Speaker. All right? Okay, Madam Speaker? So, Madam Speaker, now September, so it went from F&M is likely to increase taxes if it wins the next election to September 15th. That's the day before election. So, the campaign done hot. So you got to bump it up. So then they say the F&M would raise taxes. That's what they said.
Lie them a
They say the F&M would raise taxes. But then, Madam Speaker, but the F&M would raise taxes. But then they also doubled down and they said PLP will not increase taxes if elected. So they give you a 2-4. They gave you a 2-4, Madam Speaker. The 2-4 is the F&M is going to raise it if you elect them, but we ain't going to raise taxes on you, Madam Speaker. But alas, we know that is not the case. See, Madam Speaker? Insurance concern about VAT burden on consumers. Right?
My Lord.
Health insurance VAT burden being moved to consumers.
My Lord.
Right? Stop squeezing blood from stone.
My Lord.
Right? Stop squeezing blood from stone. And you have an article here, PLP government would reduce VAT, okay? And it says that the honorable member for Exuma said, but increasing the tax burden for ordinary Bahamians would be both immoral and a terrible economic policy.
Sorry.
Hold on.
Really, that's
I got my glasses, I just started to wear
read that
glasses.
correctly? That's
Yes.
Incredible. Incredible.
Under the title, PLP government would reduce VAT, the honorable member for Exuma, and I agree with him. Increasing the tax burden for ordinary Bahamians would be both immoral and a terrible economic policy. What do they believe today?
My Lord.
Madam Speaker.
Got to repeat that in the convention in November, man. That's serious.
Still believe it?
That is serious.
Well, the government isn't operating that way. Right? Madam Speaker, somebody say Google it. A tax. A compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. Similar, levy, tariff, duty, toll, excise, impost, contribution, assessment, tribute, tithe, charge, fee, liability, customs, dues, and then burden, load, weight, encumbrance, demand, strain, pressure, all that the Bahamian people experience. Stress, drain, imposition, responsibility, duty, onus, obligation, care, and worry. So, Madam Speaker, the government again has been shouting from the top of their lungs, making plenty noise that the F&M increased VAT by a large percentage and that they reduced VAT. But my Uncle Walburn used to say, you know, don't worry about the noise in the market, worry about the price of the fish.
Yes.
And the price the Bahamian people continue to pay, Madam Speaker, in pain and suffering
Yes.
is at its highest, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, it is clear to the Bahamian people that the reduction in VAT by the government was not about bringing relief. It was about fulfilling a campaign policy, a political bumper sticker. How do we know? Because instead of bringing relief, they taxed and increased almost everything else. So, Madam Speaker, the Bahamian people, they're right. They're right about what we did in terms of the changes we made to VAT. So now the Bahamian people are contemplating and have contemplated. You have a government that made some changes to VAT, but provided a litany of relief policies for the Bahamian people, including a reduction in bread basket items and medicine. And then you had another government who came in and said, hey, we're going to lower the VAT to 10%, right? And everybody was like, first of all, most of the country believed them that it was going to go down to 10%, and they ain't worried about no other taxes. But they didn't tell the Bahamian people that, right? And then there was some, like myself, was like, well, how are they going to do that, right? Let's see how they can do this. Take it down to 10%. Where are they going to find now revenue? But you know where they found revenue, Bahamian people, which you know? They found the revenue on the backs of the Bahamian people.
Yes.
So lower VAT down to 10% over here and tax y'all like crazy over here. And the unfortunate truth is the increases and the taxes, they're not going to stop.
You're not drying tears from every eye.
Madam Speaker, they started increasing everything, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, they even increased items that didn't even have a tax. There was no tax on bread basket items, you know,
Nope.
and on medication.
Yep.
They taxed even stuff that didn't even have a tax, Madam Speaker. With their policy, the rich have it easier now, Madam Speaker, and the poor have it harder. Right? I repeat, they've tried to cut off every avenue of relief and entrepreneurial opportunities for the Bahamian people because they have gone tax crazy, Madam
Yo,
Speaker.
calm down. I know it's painful, but calm down.
Madam Speaker, they have gone tax crazy. Tax crazy, Madam Speaker. They've pulled a move on the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker.
Sleight of hand.
It sounded good to reduce VAT to 10%. It sounded good on paper.
Yes.
But it meant higher fees and taxes everywhere else, Madam Speaker.
Shame.
And Madam Speaker, they're increasing the burden on the Bahamian people just out of a global pandemic when the economy is recovering.
Yes.
While spending what will be, Madam Speaker, $135 million in the last 2 years on consultants, Madam Speaker. $135 million on consultants, Madam Speaker. This government just cannot shake their taxing ways. They love taxing, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Notable too, Madam Speaker, is not only that the government is overtaxing, they're looking for more ways to tax. So, for example, the amendments to the Immigration Act and the Customs Management Act that seeks to give taxation powers down to the minister, Madam Speaker, they're coming. They're looking for more ways, Madam Speaker, to tax the Bahamian people.
Can't support.
So they want you to enjoy that 10%, but we're going to kill you on the other end, Madam Speaker. Okay? Madam Speaker, you know, I went through this passenger tax amendment bill, Madam Speaker. You know, and you know, it's amazing when you do some studying, you find out some things. You remember when departure tax was $15, right? $15. In 2013, the then PLP government increased departure tax to $25. But that isn't enough. They're coming now in this present budget to now increase the departure tax now, Madam Speaker, to $28, Madam Speaker. $28, Madam Speaker. Every passenger leaving the Bahamas other than by sea, every passenger not other than Bahamians. Every passenger leaving the Bahamas other than by sea, $28. That's an increase. And that's an increase on passenger tax. Right? No, it was 25. 25, don't try that. $28, so the departure tax is going up, Madam Speaker. 12% increase. And then, Madam Speaker, and before you leave the country, the government ain't finished with you yet. There's also a tourism enhancement levy, which is another $2. So now your departure tax is going to cost you $30, Madam Speaker. $30, Madam Speaker. Tourism enhancement levy for every passenger arriving or leaving the Bahamas. Every passenger, no, not other than, that's what it says. That's all right. But he said, the good member say no on the seat.
Yeah.
This is the bill they gave us.
Ask the new minister.
This is the bill that they gave us.
New tourism.
So now it can cost you more
He's checking now.
to take your little vacation. It can cost you more now with your children to take them wherever it is, you know? Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, you move on to the road traffic tax, Madam Speaker. Road traffic tax. Road traffic tax, Madam Speaker.
No, you were resting during that period.
Road traffic tax now, Madam Speaker. Right? Road traffic tax now. Right?
You was dreaming about that airport.
Road traffic tax now. Right? For the issue of a motor vehicle, license history record, $50. $50, man, $50. And Madam Speaker, I believe that this is a new fee, a new tax, isn't it?
So yes, we didn't have.
No, we did not before, because in here it says, by the insertion immediately after paragraph 1 of the new paragraph, 1A, as follows: for the issue of a motor vehicle license history record, $50. They can't shake it, Madam Speaker. They are taxing the Bahamian people like crazy.
Tax and
Right?
spend and fees again.
Right?
You read it.
Tax and spend. Right?
You read it.
So, Madam Speaker,
Still a tax.
and this is, Madam Speaker, this is, remember, earlier this year, Madam Speaker, it was earlier this year where road traffic fees, where road traffic fees was increased earlier this year, Madam Speaker, beginning January 1st, 2023, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thought about it the other day, increase, Madam Speaker. And usually, when you're in church and you hear increase.
You think in prosperity?
You think in prosperity.
I decree it.
But for this government, increase has been increase in taxes, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker,
That's a good point.
as the good member for Central Grand Bahama said, you added more harbor dues and port authority fees. You expect over $1 million more in harbor dues. This will translate into higher shipping costs and higher import costs. The Bahamian people will be paying more for goods, gas, and clothes. And so, Madam Speaker, even when it isn't direct, they come in through the back door to put more pressure on you somewhere else, Madam Speaker.
Backdoor government.
That's close.
Under New Business License Act, Madam Speaker, hotels, IBC, and insurance companies will be paying more, which translates into higher costs for the Bahamian consumers. All around, the government are heaping blows
You're making that too easy.
on the Bahamian people.
You're making that too easy.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I went through I've been doing a lot of reading, lots of reading. And I went through the PLP's, the Progressive Liberals Party, economic plan.
You need to read more Jeremiah as a pastor. You need to read more. I don't want him to backslide. He's a pastor.
Madam Speaker, recover, rebuild, and revolutionize. PLP economic plan, Madam Speaker. PLP economic plan. And Madam Speaker, you know, what it says here, that they were going to lower imports and currency outflows through buy local initiatives, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, the truth is that even the import bill has increased under this administration. Wow. Tribune, May 17, 2023, particularly concerning imports expand 10 times faster than exports. And this is from the Bahamas Trade Commission Chair, Philip Galanis.
Oh my gosh, that's not sexy at all. Like. No,
Madam Speaker.
No, that's.
Also in this, Madam Speaker. Also, Madam Speaker, review BPL operations within the first 100 days. Yeah. Remember that? To reduce costs of electricity, maintain a reliable supply, and enter into contractual arrangements which would put BPL on a solid financial footing, and most importantly, reduce the cost of living and doing business in the Bahamas. So, Madam Speaker,
they're going backwards on that one.
BPL's hedge mishandling the cost Bahamians $150 million, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, when they're not putting direct pressure on the Bahamian people, they are putting pressure by virtue of decisions or lack thereof that they're making, Madam Speaker. BPL's hedge mishandling the cost Bahamians $150 million. The hike was announced October 5th, 2022. Fuel charge on bills to almost triple for tens of thousands. This is the world that Bahamians are facing. BPL bills reflecting new fuel charge increases issued. BPL's price increases impacting Bahama, Madam Speaker. The cost of business in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, the Bahamian people know full well that while this government continues to drink their Kool-Aid, Madam Speaker, and as they continue to be chaired in here, the Bahamian people are hurting out there, Madam Speaker.
Chaired in here and booed right outside.
How much time do we have?
Put up barricades and all. Bring plenty police to protect
Sorry?
them.
Okay. 30 minutes, good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. By your grace, we get the addition.
The central bank states that consumer price inflation making food costs go up, and the marginalized and vulnerable, more vulnerable, Madam Speaker. Okay. Yet the government has reduced the food assistance program by 1.3 million, Madam Speaker, reduced subsistence support of persons by over 2.4 million, reduced the emergency desk assistance has been reduced by over $2.1 million, Madam Speaker.
Shame.
So they reduced all of that help by $5.8 million, Madam Speaker, but $135 million for consultants will be over the past 2 years, Madam Speaker. This is after the government came to office saying that they would wage a war on poverty, Madam Speaker. And when they placed the burdensome tax on bread basket items on the poor people, they were further hurt and promised relief. Where is that relief, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, and even when the government went down on 10%, there was a promise to the most vulnerable and marginalized in society that there would be a strengthening of the safety net.
Correct. Yes.
Of the safety net. But to this day, those persons have not seen that safety net, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Yes. Get yours,
Madam
break
Speaker.
up the bed.
Go with him.
Break up the bed.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
you know, we always use them. Madam Speaker, government hit over VAT assistance delays, Madam Speaker. Right? Madam Speaker, so Fidelity Bank of the Bahamas chief executive
You all have one high
told the Tribune business that the delay in relaunching the RISE program meant lower-income Bahamians had been penalized through VAT's reinstatement on bread basket foods and medicines when the Davis administration cut the rate to 10% from January 2022, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, in this budget, Madam Speaker, you know, and this, Madam Speaker, I know it's something that continues to be, I would say, a point of contention because I've said it before. The government has let down the people over the hill.
Yes, yes, yes.
The government has let down the people over the hill. Now, we all know that over the past, I don't know, decades, all governments needed to do more, make a concerted effort to really transform over the hill. To the members for Kalani's credit, it was a good start with the Over the Hill initiative. Good start. But what has the government done since then? What has the government done to transform the lives in a real significant way? In a real significant way. And this is something that the government has to look at. Not one program, significant national program to address, similar to the Over the Hill initiative. Doesn't have to be the same thing. Doesn't have to be the same thing. But what has the government done for the people over the hill? Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the issue of crime, Madam Speaker, there was 128 murders last year, 51 murders this year, Madam Speaker. And we have consistently said that crime is not a political issue, but we've asked the government to lead. But the truth is, the only significant announcement as it relates to national security has been to take away benefits from the security branches in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
To put it nicely, because we can't really use lie in this place, the member continues to repeat the inaccuracy that anything has been taken away. But his statement is fallacious in two forms. There was a public policy announcement, fallacious. You're a man of letters. Tell him what that means. In two forms. One, the national policy was delivered at our tertiary education body, and I would have thought that the opposition would support UB. National security policy has been announced. The recruitment policy, where we have recruited in 20 months, more people than they recruited in 4.5 years. The investment in technology, the investment in equipment, the investment in infrastructure have all been announced, yet St. Barnabas continues to suggest that a serving policeman has had anything taken away from him, and the ones who will turn out in the square on Thursday still get the benefits because they were in service, and St. Barnabas should know that the effort is to seek to get their reservists who will be turned out with them, just like the reservists here, benefit. So we should not be selfish.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, the truth is that a benefit is being taken away from those organizations. Yes. They've been used to a certain, the organization has been used to a certain benefit level in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Yes. And so now, again, and I won't read it again. I wouldn't read it again. Both the Police Staff Association and Correctional Services have talked about this issue, that the benefit is going to be taken away come July 1st for their organization. And in these communications, they've expressed why it shouldn't happen, because they are not being selfish. Because for them, Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
See that St. Barnabas advances is that an organization has a benefit. The Royal Bahamas Police Force has no benefit. Individual police officers do. The Bahamas Department of Correction has no benefit. Individual correctional officers do. And both of those staff associations, by statute, which I believe the FNM put in place, are not trade unions, to be consulted. It is a matter that is very clear, and to encourage any body of disciplined forces to disobey the law really isn't something that St. Barnabas should be taking part in.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, the honourable member, who I could never go toe-to-toe with in a court of law, because he's a KC, but I know in the court of public opinion and when it comes to the police and the Royal Bahamas Defence Force, that they have an issue, Madam Speaker. So I ain't gonna get on them with that, Madam Speaker, all right? The members of those security branches, they have real concerns, Madam Speaker. It ain't something I'm making up. They have real concerns about it, and what they do think about, is the fact, again, $135 million will have been spent on consultants, Madam Speaker. And while I'm on the whole issue of national security, I know, Madam Speaker, there has been this discussion out there in the public domain about the building of the hospital, Madam Speaker. No, sorry, not hospital, prison, right? The soon to be $90 million prison facility. One of the things, Madam Speaker, that I think we really have to be careful about, and while there may be need to improve the prison facilities and so forth, the monies that we are spending, if we don't focus on the social issues, social programs in a real substantive way, in 30 years, 40 years, we can be trying to build a prison for $200 million because we won't have enough places to house the people. So let us use some of this monies that we continue to spend in other ways on social programs, on programs that will make a difference in the communities and so forth, Madam Speaker. Right? Madam Speaker, how much time I have, Ms. Lightmore?
10 minutes?
Sorry?
6 minutes.
6 minutes? Oh, that's plenty of time. That's plenty of time. Thank you, I appreciate it. You know, I used your quote earlier, you know, Pinewood. Did you say, don't tell them, don't freak themselves out, right? Madam Speaker, the Family Islands, Madam Speaker, is also going through a lot, Madam Speaker, right? In Auckland, I mean, the power has been out. They experienced power outage for 3-4 days in Auckland, and I'm sure the member from Michael would have gotten reports.
Yeah, he talked about it, no.
3 and 4 days, people in North Auckland, well, in North Auckland, it was 4 days. People in South Auckland, it was 3 days. So I know the member of Michael appreciates me amplifying this, the opposition amplifying this, right? And Auckland, you know, me and the member for Eglinton, that's our home.
Ancestral home.
That's our ancestral home, Auckland's. And she smiled because she knows it's true.
Yes. Pass.
Okay, that's okay. All right,
Same
Madam
passion,
Speaker.
same passion, same
Right.
passion. The
And Madam
your
Speaker,
speech is
Madam Speaker,
identical.
and Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, also Madam Speaker, the people of Eleuthera constantly dealing with, Madam Speaker, constantly dealing with their water issues. I know that the honourable member for Central and South Eleuthera would have talked about these issues for the water issues in his constituency, Madam Speaker. But even since then, when that was communicated, December 6, 2022, I mean, Madam Speaker, supply disruption impacting communities in February, power outages, and this is power outages in North Eleuthera, Whale Point, Golden Key, Upper Bogue, Lower Bogue, 3 Island Dock area. April 14th, more power outages, Abaco, Central Eleuthera, Madam Speaker. March 7th, early dismissal for the school in Wims's Bight, 12 p.m. because of lack of water, Madam Speaker. And on and on and on, Madam Speaker, over and over again. And so, in closing, Madam Speaker, while the government continues to
5 more minutes, man.
Convince themselves, Madam Speaker, while the government continues to convince themselves that they are doing everything right for the Bahamian people.
Increase.
That's what the Bahamian people are experiencing, increase. And on this issue of taxing, Madam Speaker, you know, when we did what we had to do in 2018, we was upfront with the people, you know. We had a balanced approach, you know, right? Y'all have told the Bahamian people, they have told the Bahamian people that we ain't gonna tax you. Y'all told the Bahamian people, elect us, we ain't gonna tax you, right? But what you are in fact doing is increasing taxes to the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, they say that the truth, time? Is it time?
Members,
They've said, Madam Speaker, five more minutes.
members,
5 minutes.
5 more minutes.
They've said that the truth.
5 more minutes.
They've said that the truth. So, Madam Speaker, I can't.
members,
Oh, I can hear.
members.
5 more minutes. I know it's painful, but be patient. All of you will get your medicine. Take your time.
So, Madam Speaker. So 2 years in, Madam Speaker. 2 years in. 2 years in, Madam Speaker. The Bahamian people, Madam Speaker, have determined that this is a tax, and spend government, Madam Speaker. They have determined that this is a tax and spend government.
Doing good.
Madam Speaker, as I close, Madam Speaker.
You're doing good.
As I close, Madam Speaker, on behalf, Madam Speaker, as we are in our 50th year, Madam Speaker.
You can tell you're all feeling it.
As we are in our Madam Speaker, please, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Members,
As we are in our 50 years of independence, Madam Speaker, as I close, I just would like to.
It's painful. I know.
I just would like to, Madam Speaker, pay homage, Madam Speaker, to the founders of our country who have continued to show us the way and what we should be as a country. And as I said earlier, as we deal with these larger discussions that impact the values and who we are as a people,
Yes.
I pray that we continue to be resolute
Yes.
in letting the world know that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and we will be for our people, and we will be as a people who we want to be, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Yes.